to another episode of our Season 2 on Design to Connect. As many of you may already know, Season 2 is all about getting in more depth about the actual issues that our architectural industry is facing. So we're very excited to have this conversation with our guest today, Naama Blonder.
Hello, Naama. How are you? And how are you doing today? And where are we connecting with you from?
You are connecting with me from Toronto, Ontario, and I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Okay. So before we dive into our conversation today, we would like to give a brief introduction about your background to our audience. So one of the things that compelled us to have you here today was really the way that you wrote your bio on LinkedIn. And for this reason, if you don't mind, we decided to read it out loud as it is, because we thought what's the best way to talk about someone is through their actual words. So you say you have a bold vision to change the conversation about what good development can and should look like. And that's where you co-founded the Smart City as a result of this mindset that you have. Your professional work spans cross-planning and architecture. And by putting together the two disciplines, you are bringing a deeper and more realistic understanding of how municipal policies take physical shape. You're also a board member of Kahila, an affordable housing provider, the co-author of the Housing Affordability Report of the Ontario Association of Architects, and have served at the design review panel of City of Burlington, providing urban design advice for development applications. All this looks amazing, and not to forget all the educational videos that you actually also started. And that was another reason that grasped us to your LinkedIn profile, and we're very excited to talk more about those things. So welcome, and we're very excited.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Naama, we are gonna start our conversation maybe a bit like starting with your journey. As we talked before we started the podcast, we are all immigrants where we are living and coming from Middle East. And looking at your work, we've seen that you also entered Canada as an immigrant. You worked in some major offices in Toronto, and then you ventured out and you started your own practice. So being an immigrant myself and Hadil, we were really curious, to know more about your journey, because we think that it's very easy to fall into the trap of, feeling a victim if you're an immigrant, and feeling that if you don't have enough connections or enough people knowing you in the new country that you enter, it's very impossible, to start something of your own. So if we could start with your journey as an immigrant, of course, not decreasing your experience to just being an immigrant, but yeah.
First of all, being an immigrant gives you that outsider perspective that is so refreshing for local players, and things that I take for granted, and I have friends visiting me and say, and for them it's the same observation. But it's so refreshing when you say it and you say it out loud and make sure your voice is heard, that's why I really love what you're doing, guys. And for example, I'll give you an example to make it very concrete. We're all coming from the Middle East. I've never been to Iran, unfortunately. I've never been to Lebanon, unfortunately, because of the realities of the Middle East. I am originally from Israel, although I grew up very close to Lebanon. But I would guess and say that you don't have single family houses in the downtown core the same way Toronto has it, and the same way North American cities have it. Because North American cities were built and designed first and foremost for the car. And coming from our parts of the world and Europe, it's just, you don't see it. And coming here, moving to Toronto and saying that, pointing that out, saying, hey guys, this is wrong. We're in the middle of an affordability crisis. Toronto cannot grow in a form of more and more and more single family homes. I felt it was unique. I felt I'm bringing a new voice and a new statement to an industry, to communities that think and believe that you must live in a house with a backyard. And it's absolutely, and there's a lot of stigma around anything else. And I felt that as an immigrant, as an outsider, if you want to call it that way, saying that, feeling that, and making that a statement was very bold, and I believe took me to the place that I'm at today.
Oh, awesome. This gives us hope that Design to Connect will also get us
somewhere.
somewhere. So let's move away from your experience as like an immigrant and more towards of your experience as an architect. And we would like to know some of the challenges that and the issues that you faced during your career development. You can, if you like, you can compare if you think it's valuable, part of your career development that you've done in Israel, and then some of the issues that you faced in Toronto. Because we want to know from your perspective, what are some of the issues that you found in the mainstream, in the way that we're doing architecture in the mainstream side, and what was it that you felt was missing in the offices that led you to start your own practice?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like how did your experience help you mold that vision for smart cities?
Oh, first of all, correction, smart density. That's
sorry,
you
smart
mentioned
density.
That first. Yes,
Apologies,
I didn't correct
yes.
you the first time. So that's, I think the interesting part here is not necessarily the experience I had in Israel, but actually the experience as an employee versus becoming an employer, like having my own business, my own practice. And one of the things, you know, in North America, they're very used to having big companies, right? Like in Israel, we had really small companies and very entrepreneurial, and everyone kind of doing their own thing and innovate. And in North America, generally, it's like more towards, you know, climbing the corporate ladder and working in big companies and being a part of bigger teams. And when I worked, and I'm trying to be politically correct here, but when I worked in those big companies, I felt as, you know, more of a junior architect, that I'm kind of left behind in terms of process, in terms of meeting clients' needs, hearing what clients say, going to meet the city, just because, you know, junior staff is kind of left behind. And when we started Smart Density, we have a very clear policy that everyone is part of every single meeting of everything that is about their project. And you're welcome to join other projects if you are interested in a specific project. But I think it's those little things of having the experience as an employee and translating them as employer. What is the policy that you know, I'm bringing change, and it's really important to remember that I believe that we write our own story, and if something is not working in, or we know didn't work in other companies, it's our job to change it. And for example, I don't know, we were very, very flexible about working from home way before COVID. I think flexibility is such an important key. Efficiencies and how efficient you are in work, it just increases. And I think that's something we all learned in COVID when we started working from home. Efficiency actually increases when you allow your employees flexibility. So that is something that we had way before COVID. Like we never, you know, and I'm saying this, by the way, as a mother who works. I'm currently working from home because I have a newborn, and it's extremely important to allow that. Also, mothers are the best employees. Like we're so efficient in what we do, so it's really important to allow that flexibility. And again, what you know that didn't work for other companies, it's your job to rewrite the rules, and why not?
Interesting. Yeah. It's very empowering, the way that that you've said it. And now moving away, like from starting something of our own. Something that took our attention also in your work was how you are trying to communicate architecture and raise awareness around architecture, both with the other actors in the building industry, or let it be the general public. And like historically, architecture, like many form of arts, has been this, you know, mysterious thing that it had its own language, it had its own wording, and it was like the more mysterious it would be, the more special it would seem to the public. But now we are understanding more and more how important it is that people that are living in a city to be aware of what architecture can do, and like how your spaces can affect your psychology, how you act, and how you basically show up in your own town or in your city. But we wanted to also ask you from your perspective, why do you think this awareness raising is this important, and to talk a little bit more about your educational programs that you're providing.
I think that's an excellent question. And, you know, when I moved to Canada, and I always give that example, I came to one of the first open house I had, 600 people showed up. It was for Anastad's redevelopment on Bloor and Bathurst, and 600 people showed up, which is a lot of people, okay? And then they said, the mic is open for questions, and you saw this huge line. And then people started talking and started asking questions. And you saw that it was very clear that they're very, very passionate about what's going on in their city. But what was even more clear, that they didn't understand policy. They didn't understand what the city, where the city directs growth. So for example, they had questions of like, why can't it be 4 stories? Well, it can be 4 stories because this site was just sold for $100 million. It's not going to be 4 stories because you are 10 steps away from a subway line and a streetcar line. And it can be 4 stories because we live in a city that needs to grow up, and it can be 4 stories for so many reasons, right? Or someone asked, why can it be a park? From the exact same reasons that I just mentioned. So the site is designated mixed use. This is where growth should happen. So, and as a professional, and I'm warning you, you're going to find yourself, it's very frustrating to hear that and say, and you feel helpless. I felt helpless. I was like, where do we even start? Mm-hmm. Where do we even start explaining that it won't be 4 stories because of transit and land use and prices and housing crisis and all of those things? So I started writing. And even with writing, I felt I'm not reaching enough people. And then I started recording those short videos. And those short videos are like 3 minutes long, because I didn't think anyone would listen to me for longer than 3 minutes, or would like to learn something new that will be too complicated. And then I started writing more and more and more about, you know, what are the topics that I can write and record and teach, basically. So I'm still doing that. It's such a great platform also for, you know, to bring the message, whatever the message is. And that's what I said, you need to make sure your voice is heard. And for me, that awareness raising, our city cannot become what Toronto could become unless it will be a mutual effort by communities and the professional industry. It's not just us pushing it and saying and bringing more and more and more and being real estate industry. No, it's about getting the public want to make a change, and understand that. And I think it starts there, by understanding why it's not going to be 4 stories in a city like Toronto.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's all about like raising awareness and, you know, like allowing people feel like they are also active and building the city. Is not just
because they're already passionate, right? Like they already want to take part. You don't need to convince them they need to take a part. You're just missing the foundation of what of the conversation, right? It's like almost we would have this podcast in Hebrew, Farsi, and Arabic, and expect to understand each other.
It's very true. And actually I wanted to comment, because when we also started this podcast, we were very worried that, you know, like who's going to be listening to a 1 hour and a half conversation, especially with the span that we have these days. It's like 1 minute and you go to the next. And we were very shocked within, like, we just started, and there's a lot of interest that people are wanting to know, because I feel like it's a collective feeling that we're all thinking that we need to start rethinking the way we are building and contributing to the cities that we are living in. So please keep doing what you're doing, and don't think just because who's going to be listening to you for 3 minutes, because we definitely listened, and they're going to lead to something amazing. So let's let's move forward to the next question. And this is going to be a little bit of a long one. So just bear with me. I divided them into 2 parts. So let me know if you prefer me to ask them both at once, or would you like me to start with part 1 and then we move to part 2? But they're both kind of related to one another.
I'm listening.
Okay, so part 1, in your discussion about affordability, you talk about the missing middle. And we would like to understand from your perspective, what do you mean by the missing middle, and how is that related to creating a more affordable and inclusive cities? Part 2 is more about how we can, as architects, enhance the communication between those who are in charge of decision making, such as the developers and the people that are actually contributing to the building of our cities, and ourselves as architects and the community. Because I personally feel like there's a huge disconnect and misunderstanding between the community's needs and what we're actually providing. Especially when you're working as an architect, part of the things that we study is doing site analysis, getting, you know, involved with the community, understanding their needs, and then providing them with what they want. So when we are, when the architect is really engaged with the community and they know what they are asking for, and then you're working in an office and you'll be like, okay, like I am not doing, or I'm not creating what I just heard. And it's like the complete opposite. We understand that the work is not really reflecting at all what the needs. And another example would be, like, for example, the unit counts that we do and the layouts are based on what the market asks for. But those analyses are done based on what's already built, right? So how are the results going to be a reflection? The results are going to be a reflection of what's already out there. How can we change that to have as architects, to have a more active role with the developers? Okay, that was very long.
I think, no. I think you touched on a few crucial examples of problems in the market. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's cover them all. Let's talk about the missing middle for a moment. You asked me what it is for my opinion, so let me start from the professional definition. That is absolutely not my opinion. Okay, and the reason I want us to cover the professional definition is that I hear so many variations of what the missing middle is. People refer to mid-rise buildings as the missing middle, and it's not. Maybe in a soft way, but the way the City of Toronto planning department is referring to the missing middle is definitely not mid-rise buildings. So mid-rise buildings, the definition just in height, let's cover that to make sure we're on the same page. Low-rise is up to 4 stories, mid-rise 6 to 11, and tall buildings in the City of Toronto is 12 or higher, 12 stories or higher. So when we talk about the missing middle, we're talking about low rise, up to 4 stories in height by the definition of the City of Toronto. So when we say, if you hear the next time you hear someone says mid-rise building as a missing middle, maybe it's a missing middle somewhere, but here in Toronto, it's up to 4 stories. Now, the missing middle could also mean, you know, the middle of income, the middle of demographics, the middle in height, the middle in unit sizes, the middle, like all the things that fall in the middle. But this is more of a soft definition of what is the middle, because we need something that is between a house and between a small tiny condo. So if you're asking me today, one of the greatest problems is that if you are a family and you have a family, you have whatever it is, you outgrew the 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom unit that you can afford, and you need more. Okay, I don't want to call it family, I don't want, whatever it is, you need more. Right now in the city of Toronto, you don't have that option. And we decided that we don't want to live in the house in the suburbs like any other, family that think they need to live in a house. And we went through the search of finding a 3-bedroom condo. I can tell you that it was extremely challenging to find a 3-bedroom condo, period. Then it was extremely challenging to find something that works for families. We found one eventually, but because for me, it was about making the trade-off. Okay, I don't want to live in a house. I want to live downtown Toronto. I want to be close to transit. I want to be close to Queen West, where an area that I love. I want to be able to walk to get my groceries, my coffee, whatever, right? And I can't have that in suburban Vaughan, Mississauga. I can't have that walkable neighborhood. So this is topic number one. Topic number two that you mentioned about the community needs versus market versus what's being built. And I think that's probably the worst problem we have right now and why we have it. So the cause for that is the way we finance construction in this city. So in order for developers to have money to build buildings, they pre-sell the units. Basically, and you get the unit 4 or 5 years down the road. So they are basically selling units for investors. Okay, so and the investor, all they want, because prices per square foot, they would get smaller units, and the smaller the unit, the better, because then they're going to rent it, and it almost doesn't matter. Families need larger units, and it's also cost per square foot, but the developer won't sell it to pre-construction sale because it's really hard to find couples that would say, I will buy now and I will move in 5 years from today when I have 2 kids. Maybe I have 2 kids, maybe I have 3 kids, maybe I have a kid and a dog. Really? So it's really hard for young couples to make that decision of what they will need 5 years from today. So that's why developers don't build larger units. They don't sell it to the end user. They only sell it to investors. And as a result, we have a huge problem that there are units that are being built, but they are not the right type of units. And the next thing, and I'm not sure it's for architects, it's again a much bigger problem, but how you change that. Okay, so that was a long answer to a long question, but we did it.
Well, it's a very complex question, right? Like it cannot be answered in one sentence. You need to especially because I feel like I'm always questioning these things. I'm trying to find answers to make the work that we do for me to make sense of the work that I'm doing. And I think what you provided me with right now gives ease to the mind for sure.
So
okay,
thank you so much, Naama. Talking about affordability, we were thinking that most of the time when we talk about affordability, the first thing that is mentioned is increasing density. But when I look at the city that I live in, for example, Milan, the city density has been high for so many years now. I mean, almost nobody lives in a single family like villa type of house, but still the city center and the city itself, it's every day becoming less affordable. And it's becoming in a way that the city center, like there's no residential housing anymore. So looking at what's happening, let's say in Europe, I wanted to ask you if we take, let's say, increasing density as one of the main factors that could help affordability, what could be some supporting factors that could help affordability happen, like in cities like Europe?
Yeah,
Like in
and
Europe.
you know what? It's really interesting how when I traveled, I just realized that my name shows as my partner name.
But don't worry,
Oh,
in
it's
the
okay. We'll
recording,
change
it's not going to show.
Oh, it won't?
No,
Okay.
no, no.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. It's really interesting the point you raised about European cities, because I think in a way you are even in a worse situation than ours, because we were just before COVID, we visited Madrid, and our friend in Madrid was saying the exact same thing. We have friends in Barcelona, they said the exact same thing. Affordability, it seems like affordability is the problem of our generation, the crisis of our generation. I'm not saying we have other crises, like we have, it's not the only crisis, okay?
One of many.
One of many, exactly. When I said that, my partner said, I don't know if you can say that. What about climate? What about, so, but it's definitely one of many, but it is real, right? Because what worked for our parents' generation and what worked for previous generation is obviously not working for us. And it's obviously only going to become worse and worse for future generations. So Adil is here in Toronto. Just imagine, like, you know what's going on here now. Can you imagine this city in 25 years if nothing changes? Like, the affordability crisis here will really be horrible. Now, European cities, the problem is different, because you don't build in because of heritage preservation reasons and whatnot, but you also don't build enough, period, right? Because and I know that because I lived in Paris, and you saw that you just don't build enough. Now, at the same time, European cities don't handle the same level and numbers of immigration as Toronto. Toronto is now the fastest growing city, not for now, for years, but it is the fastest growing city in North America. We passed Chicago. We are expected to pass LA, I think, in few, like probably sooner than a decade. And we have land to build. So from many aspects, you are facing a really acute problem, but you definitely don't build enough. So that would be my 2 cents. But what is interesting is that the affordability crisis is international problem. This is not a Toronto thing. This is not a Tel Aviv thing. It's not. It's our generation. And by the way, when I was in South Korea, Seoul, millennials told me the same thing. Seoul is not affordable enough. So whatever worked for previous generations obviously stopped working somewhere because it's not working for us.
Yeah. I was reading an article a while ago also, and it was showing the way that, like, the housing stocks, like the amount that the housing stocks increased, the salaries increased on a much lower level from, let's say, 30-40 years ago. So let's say if housing stocks became 10 times more, the salaries became 2 or 3 times more. And this could be also another something else that can contribute to being broke.
Because not everything is accelerating on the same level.
Yeah.
So for sure. Okay, so let's go more into like a personal reflection, or like a deeper question, because I feel that and this is something that Arizu and I talk about often, is like the more that we expose ourselves to different challenges, the different that we feel like we are stuck in a loophole trying to understand, when is it important to draw the line between what is acceptable and not acceptable, and when to really be vocal, and when is it time to take a step back and sit in the safe chair. And I feel like this is a challenge that we face on a daily basis, especially with the work that we do, because we feel like we're contributing to some of the decisions that we don't necessarily agree with or not making sense to us. And we start to realize how complex some of those issues are, and just like we had in this conversation, like the issues that we're facing are way more complex than we think they are, and there's so many underlying issues that we don't know about. And we've had so many conversations with professionals and business owners about this topic, and the common answer that I found was that that they provided me with is that sometimes you just have to accept whatever is there and take it to keep the machine going and to be able to actually to generate money, especially if you have employees, to keep them employed. So we feel that a lot of architectural firms, with having that mindset, shifted from being an actual studio to more of like a Revit monkey machine place.
Mhm.
And we also know that we also have the same issue with the clientele, the clients that we serve. We can all agree that some developers, they're known to be more business driven oriented. So all they care about is keeping the money cycle moving. So how do you navigate through this challenge yourself, if you do? And if we were to start analyzing this issue from a macro level, where do you think we should start? And for us to understand what are some of the changes that we actually have control of, and for us to actually, raise awareness to the new generation of some of the changes that we can start doing, whether it's in the architectural office to start shifting the module that we work with, or within our community. So
I think I would ask myself if the company that I work for represents my values, because I can tell you that at Smart Density, every project that we take has to be smart density, meaning it has to be near transit. If you're calling me, if you're a potential client and you're calling me to do a cookie cutter project in the suburbs, I would tell you we are not the right fit for you. And I can tell you that we even turned down a 6,000 square feet house in Forest Hill, which for the context is one of the richest neighborhoods in the city.
areas.
And we did say no to that because it's not what we believe in, right? And I'll tell you even more. When I interview architects to join that want to join Smart Density, and we have a position open, I tell them, do you know that we are not the type of company that import marble from Italy and, spend a lot of time of designing the kitchen and bringing whatever it is, because this is not the type of work that we do, because it doesn't reflect our values. So, and let me tell you, you're absolutely right about complexity. Everything. And it's really funny how, I sometimes see a new policy the city is introducing, and you see how clearly the good intentions are. You see that it's very, very easy, but you also see how the other side finds a way to maneuver and pivot that policy to their benefit. Everything is complicated and everything is bottom line driven, and it's a good thing too, because I think the best housing provider is the private sector. I always say that. I don't think we should look up to the government and ask them to rescue us. It should be provided by the private sector. And I think for you, first of all, ask the questions. Don't ever shy away. Ask the questions, even ask the clients, in a very, polite and straightforward way. But you should definitely ask why you made that decision, or bring the pros and cons and try to understand the why behind it. I think, yeah, you absolutely, and you must do that. I don't know if I would recommend anyone to be, how you put that, you say like stay away in your seat. I don't think it's the right way, especially in an industry that innovation is part of having a dialogue, and if you have a better idea, absolutely speak up. So I would start by asking, am I working for the right employer? And if you feel that your values, are not, don't allow you to stay there, so look for another job.
Okay. I'll be employed after this.
Yes.
It's true. And how about like navigating with some of the developers? Do you think that there's hope to be more of a collective, like, so instead of everyone working independently, or for us to be like more services, do you see a vision where our industry becomes more of a collective or more of collaborative approach with all the stakeholders?
I mean, how could it not, right? Like, I think you would be surprised how many developers actually want to hear the community. They want to find the best way to service the community through the building. And I think it's really easy to picture the real estate developer as the villain in the story, while I actually think that real estate, everyone could be a developer, right? Everyone could be a developer. It's really easy to be a developer. While go and try your luck with open a bank in Canada, be a pharmaceutical company, open a communication company. There are only Rogers and Dell, right? These if anything is, but real estate is, it's so much easier to see. So people are, tend to think that they need to fight the real estate developer, while reality is that there's so much room for dialogue and change and see how the building could better serve the community, that I just wish communities would understand that they're not entering an adversarial dialogue just for the sake of having an adversarial dialogue. I think there's so much room for and potential for true collaboration. I wish architects would drive the conversation more and not stick to design or aesthetics. But I do believe that, the being more of a collaboration, I definitely see that as something that must happen.
Okay, great, thanks. And you said something, and I feel like because once you, and we mentioned that also in one of our previous questions, it's all about building trust, right? Like we have to build trust with one another for us to actually believe in one another's intention and stop seeing the other side as that they don't care about us or they're not building something for the community, but actually trust their intentions of wanting to know and trying their best to deliver. So I feel like we did reach the end of this podcast today, but before we wrap up, we would like to know if you have any last minute words, advice, and if you would like to tell us more about your practice and the educational videos that you're doing.
No, the only thing I would say, the only thing I would say is that how great, like this is, they talk a lot about women in real estate, but this is really great. Like I've been interviewed a lot, and I never had that, female host, and I think that's great. I think also in architecture specifically. So I really love what you're doing. So that's
wow,
great.
thank you. Awesome. And I want to add something also, and this is very irrelevant to architecture. Actually, it's not that irrelevant, but I hope this is also a lesson that how we can, we are from 3 different parts of the world that don't really, unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, and don't really, they're not well put together. Let's just put it that way. Politically, there's a lot of conflict, and yet we are sharing this conversation because of our common interest and common grounds. And this is something I felt that I have to mention, because we put all the conflict aside. So thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
and it's really interesting because I don't think we have a conflict, right? Like the three of us. And
No.
and I told you I grew up very close to Lebanon. I see Lebanon from my home, and I only met Iranian people or Farsi people in Canada for the first time, and I was so curious to have conversations. And by the way, culturally we get along so well, much better than we do with others. So yeah, I think the political conflict is just I don't know, like it's just above us. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, Naama. And you have a really beautiful name.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.